Yo, what's going on, guys? We're back today for another video, and today we got a special guest, the leader of my alliance battle group here, Taters. So this guy is really great in war. He does like all of our planning, paths, defense, all that stuff. And he makes war videos as well, so they're really awesome. I really enjoy watching them myself. So if you guys want to check them out, a link will be in the description below. So yeah, what's up, Taters?
What's up, man?
So yeah, we're gonna go over our defense and just kind of like how we plan it, why we place, what we place. So yeah, it looks like we're starting off with the boss nodes and stuff.
Yeah, so I thought maybe I would just kind of talk about our defense placement the way that I plan it. And I usually, also with like war attack paths, I usually plan starting from the boss and then kind of working my way backwards. So
Right.
usually with defense, what obviously you want to do is just try to maximize your opportunity to, you know, create really difficult matchups or force people to bring teams that are maybe not great together, like three different people that don't have synergies, and just kind of make it more difficult for planning.
Right.
And in tier one, especially against the alliances that I think 4Loki would, be concerned about facing, which maybe there might be maybe four or five total that we know that we'll have to actually perform really well to beat. We know that in those wars, we're really only going to be getting four, maybe five deaths in each battle group if things go well. So you really just kind of, I guess our standpoint is just try to find out like where are we going to get our four deaths on this map. And then a lot of the other stuff, to be honest, is just like not allowing certain attack teams that, ravage war defenses to be sent out and stuff. So you can kind of do that by causing some, difficult, matchups on a path and stuff that just forces people to flip flop between their attackers and stuff. So I'll just kind of get into it.
Okay. And just before you do, so we always go for max diversity, right?
That's true. Yeah, not
Yeah.
always. I mean, against any top alliance, we're usually going to go for max diversity. Yeah.
Yeah, and for all these screenshots, we're running flow, right?
Correct. Yeah, this is a flow defense set here, and in this defense set, BG3 our battle group did go fully diverse.
All right. I had a question. So why'd you put Weapon X as the boss?
Yeah, sure. So the biggest reason is there really is limited options to solo him as a boss, especially in tier one with a boost. The tier one bosses are getting 1,000% their actual health. So in R3, I don't, obviously huge. We see huge bosses all the time with a ton of health.
Yeah.
And with a regener like Weapon X, there really are only a few options that are even capable of soloing him. So that's kind of what we're doing. And the other thing is, obviously, he's a relatively new defender, and he's extremely rare.
Yeah.
So it's not a defender that people can actually practice against outside of duels. It just makes for kind of a complicated, planning when people are facing us. So that's kind of the reason, just to try to throw somebody out there that people can't watch a bunch of YouTube videos to try to figure out.
Right. And he can't be quaked as well on the boss node.
Exactly. That's a huge thing. I mean, the number one counter for him in war is absolutely Quake, Quakers. And that's one of the few nodes on the map that kind of eliminates Quake. And I'll actually be talking about focusing on those nodes in particular and making sure that we're placing somebody that normally would be quaked. But yeah, so like that's kind of usually where I start. I just want to make sure that we're putting a boss up that's going to be difficult to solo.
Yeah.
The best bosses for me are the bosses that are difficult even if you play them right. So obviously Warlock is another really good boss option with flow. We do have an R3 on defense. You can see there the Strands is on node 55. just because he's got so much health and he hits pretty hard into the block. So the kind of ideal matchups for him, like Guillotine 2099, even Medusa, they end up taking quite a bit of block damage, and if you mess up, that can kill you. So
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, just talking through this mini island, you know, Quake is going to be probably for the majority of like top tier alliances. Quake is going to be all over this map. I think last season every single person in BG3 used Quake in attack at least once. So we're just trying to kind of counter her, and a lot of these placements are meant to be hard counters to Quake. So the first thing is like that Korg counter tactics is the node buff there. And that just means that obviously the more you hit them, the harder they hit you. And Quake completely bypasses that because she doesn't hit anybody. So Korg can be quaked, but Korg requires really skilled Quakers and obviously has a lot of health and class advantage. So that really minimizes Quake's effectiveness there. Most people are going to see that and they're going to want to send an Omega,
Right.
which is totally fine. And Omega's probably going to solo that node every time. But you can kind of see that the next couple fights, if somebody were to take Omega there, are hard counters to Omega too. So Vision on node 52 has a massive armor. Quake can bypass that, but he also gains synthesis power. So he's kind of a small counter to Quake there. And then Omega obviously would have no chance.
Oh yeah, on
Corvus,
that Warlock.
exactly, yeah. Corvus can obviously armor break Vision there, but he's a flow defender. And then like Warlock is debuff immune. Quake is probably the defender or the attacker that we would send there if we had a Warlock there, but he is the type that if you mess up, then you can die pretty quickly. So
Yeah.
and then Iron Man in the middle, he's flow. He can't be quaked. That's another kind of good Quake node because people use Quake there a lot because it's got kinetic transference. So every time you take a blocked hit, the defender gains power. And then Clairvoyant there on node 48, that's fully debuff immune. And she is going to gain a lot of power on that node if you try to stun her because she's debuff or because she's immune to that. So Quake is not an option there.
Okay. Yeah.
And then node 50 is just one of the natural Quake immune nodes. It has super strong physical resistance there. Quake can be used on that node, but she'll time out against any defender that's R5 or higher with a reasonable health pool. So because all of her like aftershock damage is physical damage.
Okay.
So put a thing there because it's got physical resistance. He's got a ton of health. He's got his own physical resistance, so you can't use Quake. You can't use Quake, can't use Corvus, can't use Ghost. Obviously, there are some attackers that you can use. We would send an Omega there, but even that is going to be a pretty tough fight, and that's a SIG 200 R3. So that would take a while, even for a good Omega player.
Yeah.
And then up top is Longshot.
Underrated defender, actually, I think.
Yeah, he is. He killed me this season.
Yeah.
But the big thing with Longshot is, on that note especially, he's going to gain 200% power. Nobody wants to mess with his L2 because it can just melt you in seconds. Mm-hmm. And he has a mechanic that's natural to his SIG ability, kind of like Doctor Strange, where he can just auto-nullify some of your buffs based on karma. And then, obviously, with Mystic Dispersion, that's going to shoot his power up. And on that node, he just gets a lot of extra power in general. So Quake can definitely do that fight. But you would probably want to do parry-style quaking because he can auto-nullify the dexterity if you just dex style him. Mm-hmm. So it can just be something that's problematic for people. And all we're really trying to do is just make people think and second guess themselves and obviously, hopefully make a mistake at some point that could cost them.
All right. That's a pretty stacked mini island, so.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So from that point, let's just go ahead and start kind of at the beginning, the bottom left here.
Okay.
Um, so you see this path here, obviously, it's Psychic Thorns, which just means any damage you deal, you're going to take damage back. It's kind of like an electro mechanic. So, Namor, Quake obviously is really good for this path, but it's almost Corvus immune. We have sent Corvus there to try to grab some charges, and he loses a lot of health. He can stay alive, but it's going to be unit suck. So that's a good place to kind of hide defenders that might otherwise be, um, you know, just sitting missions for Corvus. So in this war, we put Guillotine 2099, but she can pretty easily be quaked. So that's almost just like a wasted defender there. And then this path 2, this has poison on it. So this one actually cannot be quaked. You can use Corvus here, but he'll also lose a ton of health, and you really can't mess up because if you lose your glaive charges, then you can end up dying. But it's Quake immune, basically. So that's why I like to generally put a flow defender here.
Oh,
And
yeah.
magic, obviously, is just a pain because of limbo and the limbo damage.
Yeah.
So that's why we put her there. And then node 1 over here it's got I can't remember what the node buff is actually called, but it's got 70% reduced ability accuracy for robots on it. So normally you would see a Havoc and you would think like Guillotine 2099 or Warlock, somebody with an armor. They can actually, their armors can be failed when they enter the fight. They've got basically a 70% chance to not have their armor throughout the fight, which is pretty sweet. So there are some non-robot attackers that you could use here. Venom would be one. Angela would be one. You can obviously try to ghost him, but you would just have to time the detonations. So there are some options, but it's just kind of trying to confuse people, and maybe somebody won't think about that, and they'll send Warlock in, and his armor will fail, and then he'll die. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the stuff that we're just kind of trying to boost our odds of somebody making a mistake or messing up or running into a matchup that they didn't really fully think out. And then DV up here, I mean, he's basically just a wasted option, but because of the regen that he gets at the beginning of the fight, I like him on this node. This is the one where the attacker is going to degen based on the amount of health that they've taken from the defender. So that little extra regen might cost somebody a potion or something like that. But
Yeah.
and then Kodok, he can be quaked, he can be Omega'd and Namored and stuff, but with Quake, he can be difficult if you're not fully dexing. If he throws a heavy, his heavy is pretty tough. So we just like to put him here, and he's also pretty much Corvus immune on this node unless somebody wants to risk losing all their health.
There's Limber on that Modoc too, right?
That's true. Yeah, there is limber there. So parrying is not really something that's going to work. It's 20% limber too, so you basically get 3 or 4 parries.
Yeah.
And then mini island here. This is a really good island to try to focus on getting kills. We like to put Arcus here sometimes, or sometimes we'll put him on 21 because he can't be quaked because of the cold snap. Now you can use like Symbiote Supreme and some of those other options, but he also can't be. He's immune to like power, steal and power reduction effects. So like magic could be a trap fight. Like if somebody doesn't know that and they take magic in here, he's not going to get power locked.
Ooh, okay.
Killmonger is pretty common placement here. I'm sure that most people have seen that placement, but obviously when he's inflicted with debuffs, he gains power, so that's pretty good for Quake fights. Like if somebody wants to take a Quake in there, they really can't mess up and they really can't hit him because he'll eventually get to an L3. If not, it is all or nothing, so if they play a perfect fight with Quake, then they'll be fine. And then on this side here, this is like the unstoppable toggle, and then node 19 is aspect of war, so every time you throw a special, the defender becomes unstoppable. But I like this placement with Man Thing because it's like it would be like a standard Quake fight. But if you do continuously dex, number one, you're going to trigger spite, and then also he's going to nullify those dexterities, and he'll convert them into poison. So you can get into trouble using Quake against Man-Thing. And then obviously Ghost.
Pete's Ghost.
Yeah, Pete's Ghost, yeah. Unawakened R3, Panamam Pete, of course. But yeah, she can't be quaked. I mean, she can be, but it's like really, really sketchy.
Yeah.
Basically, she can't be evaded anytime she has a precision. And she's obviously flow. So we ended up actually getting a kill with her.
I think he's gotten a kill with her like every war, hasn't he?
Yeah, and I think last season, Ghost was one of BG3's top defenders. So
that's crazy.
It is crazy. And then Mojo. He's flow, of course, and you can really quake him almost anywhere on the map that's not quake proof. But this node is really tricky because it's got brute force.
Yeah.
And Quake players really don't like dealing with brute force because it ends up taking away so much of their damage. So, we like that placement there. I think he also got a kill this war. And then this really, I mean, people like to bring Quake for this path because of the power gain for the defense. It goes up quite a bit until, like on node 9, once they get to a bar of power, then the power gain plummets. And then on node 14, once they get to 2 bars of power, the power gain plummets. So people like to bring Quake here, but quaking Quake is probably not advisable because if she charges a heavy herself, she can end up stunning you. And, obviously here it's basically just, are you going to mess up or not? If you don't mess up, then you're going to get through this fight easily. But if you do and he gets to an L2, especially with an armor, for example, he can stun you and you can't evade it. So it can just cause some issues there. And then these minis up here, honestly, most of these minis, like most minis are going to get, except for like the end, most of the time these 2 minis here are going to get soloed just because you have all 10 attackers that can access these.
Yeah.
So they're able to chase really good matchups. But node 23 is going to get quaked almost every time. So that's almost kind of like a throwaway fight there, just wasting Captain Marvel, but she usually doesn't do too much. And then node 22 is one of the best nodes to try to pick up a kill because a lot of it is going to be associated with RNG. If the defender is just crazy passive, then they can end up building a ton of Furies, and it really only takes 4 or 5 Furies for them to start, for them to kill you in one combo. So Fury gets some really weird AI sometimes, and especially when you're trying to bait that L2. So we like that placement there, but these 2 we usually switch up every single war. Sometimes we'll put Doom here because you really should not quake this fight because of the Furies. Like you'll get to the point where if you take a block,
that could be crazy.
Yeah, pretty much. So going into section, this is the far island with the hidden path. So I did have these here to the hidden defenders. I kept them hidden, but I mean usually we're going to fluctuate between trying to make it quake proof and throwing in like defenders that frankly are like have no chance of getting kills and just forcing somebody to take that path and just waste that person's attack team. So there are not really a bunch of defenders that you can get kills with on the hidden nodes because most people are going to bring just the widest variety of attackers they can. Like they'll bring an Omega, they'll bring a Quake, and then they might bring, like a Corvus or something else to handle the fights that those 2 can't.
Yeah.
So it really depends, but we hardly ever pick up kills on this path, so we usually try to we're not going to usually put our best defenders on the hidden path. But this is obviously a good node here, node 12. It applies weakness automatically, and obviously that counts as a debuff for Void, so he's going to deal additional damage every weakness that's applied to you. There's one counter that we've been using for a few seasons that I've seen a couple other alliances pick up since. I don't want to spoil that because a lot of people still have trouble with this fight, but the counter is directly countered here by this Terrax placement. and that's kind of the plan there. He's also flow, obviously, and then this is villainy and um, whatever tyranny. So only villains gain power on this node, and they also get like precision. So that can be kind of a tough fight for people if you bring the wrong person.
Yeah.
And then here's your mole man here. Obviously, he has the option or the possibility of shrugging off debuffs with tenacity. So this is Aegis heavy, and you just gotta be smart on this node. It's not too hard, but this just adds a little wrinkle.
Yeah.
And then Nova, this is almost a unanimous placement. Like almost every single alliance is going to place a Nova there if they have one ranked. It's Aegis Intercept, and he has an auto block mechanic. If he has a Fury up, he's going to auto block you 100% of the time. Um, he's not going to stun you unless he has like 60 or more. I can't remember what they're called, but basically Nova charges. So
Right.
that's just a tricky fight. Um, and it forces players to actually use intercepting. Like you can't just use Ghost here because he's basically Ghost immune.
Who do you think are some of the best options for that Nova?
So we send Symbiote Supreme because he's going to nullify defender buffs at the start of the fight right away. So Nova starts with a Fury buff, and that allows him to auto block your intercepts. Symbiote Supreme just takes that away. Now, when Nova loses his Fury, he regains it. I think that it's associated with a Sig level, but I think he regains it between 10 and 12 seconds after it's removed. So you've basically got 10 seconds with Symbiote Supreme to get the 3 intercepts in to get the Aegis off. And if you're able to do that, then the fight's going to go smoothly. If you don't, then you'll just have to kind of keep going through that cycle. So I've taken the fight with Doom before, and it went well, but I've seen people struggle with Doom because it can be difficult to get the indestructible charges off of him before he regains his Fury, and then you just have to go through the cycle all over again, making sure that you're nullifying the Fury and so on and so forth. So it's a tough fight.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, Sim or Fury probably are the best options. Maybe Claire, I don't know, but. And then moving on back to section 2. So this is the regen and buffet path. People like to bring Quake sometimes. A lot of people obviously are going to be bringing Void and Warlock to try to stop the regen. So really here we're just trying to make this as complicated as possible. Warlock kind of counters both of these champs, but he might struggle against Taskmaster once he becomes immune, and he's also a flow defender. Quake might be comfortable here, but she's got class disadvantage. I don't think that any Quaker is actually comfortable against Domino, so that would be a very tough fight.
Yeah.
And then Taskmaster can be very problematic for Quakers if you make any mistake or if he throws his heavy. So it's really just trying to minimize what the other alliances' attack options are for here.
Yeah.
And, this path is useless. It's Biohazard and then like Evade. We really rarely place anybody here because they're just going to get, the nodes aren't hard. If you bring like Omega or a robot, there's just nothing stopping them from getting soloed. And then this path is kind of interesting. Node 27 is a really good node to try to pick up a death. It's encroaching stun, so every 20 seconds the attacker is going to get stunned unless they're in the process of throwing a special attack, or if they're stun immune, obviously. And so you've really got to play around the timer. There are a couple counters to this node. The best counter is definitely Quake because her concussion can completely shut off the encroaching stun. That's who we use a lot on this node. But actually, Mysterio is, I believe, he has some ability where he's like immune to ability accuracy reduction. So she doesn't work against him, and that's why we placed her here or him here. And then back here, most people are going to look at Sinister and be like, okay, that's a Quake fight or something like that, especially with flow. And so this is kind of hopefully a trap fight where they see Sinister and they think, okay, Quake, and then they see Mysterio and they don't think about his abilities, and they might just be like, oh yeah, we can just Quake him, and then they won't be able to. He'll gain a bunch of power, and they'll have to play around that, and hopefully that'll pick us up a kill. But Corvus is pretty good on here, but obviously is not a good option for Sinister. So these two kind of just force whoever takes that path to bring at least 2 attackers for those 2 fights.
Okay. Yeah, because Nick Fury's pretty good for the Node 27 as well, right?
He is, yeah, he's great. So once he's in real Nick mode, obviously he can't be stunned. So he's a really safe option.
But then you wouldn't want to bring him for Sinister.
Exactly. So, that's basically what we're going for, is just to try to make it complicated. And there are a lot of people that would love to just take 1 or 2 attackers into a war, like use their kind of the ones that they're most comfortable with. And if we're able to force people to bring 3 separate attackers, that might, make it better for us overall. So,
yeah.
And then Doc Ock here, this is fully debuff immune. He's a flow defender, and Quake can take care of him pretty easily, but his animations are really, really herky-jerky, and sometimes they can get confusing. So even some of our best Quakers have, taken a few combos from Doc Ock just because his tentacles they're just going everywhere and stuff.
Yeah.
So that's why we have him here. And then I think we've got 2 more here. So
yeah.
In the middle island here, this path is going to be the defenders are going to gain a bunch of power if they have debuffs applied, and if it's like an armor break or bleed debuff, for example, then they're going to gain double the amount of power that they would naturally from the node. So this would be for people watching that are trying to pick up some tips on getting 1 extra kill when they're doing defense. If you have somebody that you're willing or that you're allowing to place with suicides, these 2 nodes would be really good nodes to put those defenders because they're going to get a whole bunch of power gain. So that's something to consider. But mostly, these people are going to get soloed. He's kind of a Quake counter. You can Quake him, but he's got a double medium, which can throw off the timing of Quake players. And then here she gets passive power gain. So, you can Quake her, but you might take an L1 or something like that. So, again, it's just some extra things to think about for people. This Elsa picked up a kill this war on this node, but this is unblockable 1 and unblockable toggle. So every 8 seconds, she's going to go unblockable for all of her attacks, and that lasts for 4 seconds. And then she also has an unblockable L1. So even if she's not in the unblockable phase, her L1 is unblockable. So really problematic here, and people like to bring Quake because obviously they don't want to deal with the power and the unblockable specials. And it's not advisable to Quake Elsa. I'm sure that it can be done, but we would never do that. So that can be a tricky fight. And then over here you've got No Retreat, which usually gets soloed. Quake is a good option here if you don't do deck style, if you just do parry style and you never back up. She's a good option there. This one's really good for us. And Symbiote Supreme and Clairvoyant are really good defenders on this node because he's going to be debuff immune for the first 25 seconds. So I have actually, in the past, I have tried to Quake this node. I think last offseason or maybe the offseason before, I tried to Quake this node, and right when he got the first concussion on him or the first aftershock on him, his power just shot up, and he just kept pounding me with L1. So he's really good there because he's going to gain a bunch of power if you try to Quake him. And then Clairvoyant, same thing. She's just going to gain a bunch of power if you try to Quake her there. And a lot of people like to bring Quake on this path. So another good placement for if you're running like Bulwark, or if you're just trying to trap Corvus, if you're like in lower levels, like tier 3 or 4, something like that, and you're trying to get a kill on Corvus, a good placement here would be Colossus, because it gives him armors, I believe. Every crit takes away an armor, but he's armor break immune. So every time you try to parry him with Corvus to try to armor break him, he's going to actually gain an extra armor. So we've gotten some timeouts a few seasons ago with Colossus here.
Okay.
And then this is toggle unblockable doom. This is probably going to get quaked, or at least if we saw that placement, we would send a quake there. You would just have to not mess up and get hit. Otherwise, you could get shocked, and then you would be susceptible to getting slapped. So that's why we put him there. Big health pool too.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is safeguard node. Quake should have no problem with this, but Rogue is a flow defender.
Right.
So, people like Omega or any bleeders, she's going to shrug those off fairly quickly, and she's going to gain a bunch of power. Plus, it's got kinetic transference. She's going to naturally get power if you're just trying to play her straight up and like actually hit her.
Yeah. So you probably definitely want to perfectly quake that rogue.
Yeah. So absolutely, you would want to quake her. And Warlock, for example, he could be a decent option if you got an infection on her, then you could bleed her. But we do place with Max Limber, so
yep.
She's gonna, she's not gonna be stunned for very long at all. I don't even know if you'd be able to get off a parry and a heavy on her. Yeah. So, and then over here, again, these are. We also like to place defenders on these two nodes, even if we don't expect them to get a kill, because taking path 8 linked is really, really dangerous because this one heal blocks you, and then both of these nodes are going to degen you if you're far away from the defender. So you need to stay close. And
it's 3% degen, right? And 1% regen?
Yeah. Yep, exactly. So it's really lopsided. And if you're quaking, for example, and a lot of people are going to use quake here, if you're quaking, you need this to be unlinked because you're going to spend a lot of time away from the defender. So we like to do this because it forces people to actually have to take these fights first, or if they feel like, we'll just take this path first, then they could be in trouble where at least they're losing a bunch of health, and if they mess up, they might die. And then over here, this is reverse controls path. We use a combination of attackers depending on who the defenders are, but we try to send Enzo with Emma and Mysterio because they have a synergy together where they're completely immune to reverse controls. So they're just literally straight up normal fights if you bring both of those attackers. And that's actually why we placed Annihilus here, because he counters both of those attackers. Mm-hmm. Obviously, with his armor break, he can counter Emma, and then he's got class advantage against Mysterio, and he can break his helmet and stuff like that.
And he's just a really good defender.
And he is a good defender. And this one's an R3 too, so he's got a lot of health.
Okay.
And then this one down here, I don't know. I think that this is just kind of, we're just sticking her there. But if I saw this, I would assign a Quaker. Mm-hmm. But, with Quake, you just have to mentally adjust for the reverse controls. And if you don't, then you could get yourself into trouble. So there's that. And then, this also has the close encounters node on it. We like to put usually flow defenders here, forcing people to Quake it. And then maybe they'll lose a bunch of health from it. And then up here is counter tactics and kinetic transference. So this usually gets quaked, but because of like the Furies and the auto block, if somebody were to bring in a different attacker, then they could build up the counter tactics, and maybe she has a bunch of attack. I don't know. I mean, looking at kind of our map, I would expect like maybe this node to get a kill. And then, I don't know, you kind of just go through and you start picking out where you might get some kills. I'm pretty sure in this war we're going to end up getting a lot of them, but, against like Kenobis and stuff like that, it's like, can we get 2 or 3 out of them? And if we can, then that's a huge win for us. So, I don't know, man. I know that I ended up talking pretty much straight for 30 minutes, but do you have questions about anything?
Do we have anyone placed with suicides in our alliance?
It really depends on the opponent. So we calculate the opponents using the class advantage, their war opponent calculator. And if we're going up against an alliance that um, so there are kind of two strategies, and we always discuss beforehand in officer chat what we want to do for that war. But like up against Kenobi, for example, we faced them in War 2. We chose not to place anybody with suicides, and we also chose to go fully diverse. Right. But against an alliance like that, where we're a huge underdog, and any kill that we can get that maybe we wouldn't have gotten can be a huge advantage. So against top opponents, we might try to trick somebody with suicides and perfectly chosen defenders and nodes. But usually we're not going to, just because it's not worth it. And like with just a few exceptions, really, almost every defender is going to be a lot easier if they have suicides, because when they throw specials, they're going to be losing a bunch of health. So
yeah,
especially with flow, when our defenders are getting a lot of power in general, suicides just doesn't really mesh well with flow. Because the recoil is just going to help out the attackers, and we don't really want to give them any help.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Any other questions, man?
I don't know. You covered it all pretty well, man. Yeah, I think that covers it for our defense and flow and everything. Dude, yeah, thank you for coming on and explaining all this.
Of course, yeah. Thanks for having me, and sorry for all the rambling, guys.
Oh no, dude, I enjoyed it.
Work your editing magic, Legacy, and make it less rambly.
No, dude, they're gonna enjoy all 30 minutes.
That's great. I can't believe I talked for 30 minutes. I thought it was gonna be like 10 minutes, but
there's a lot of info.
All right. That's true.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, cool, man. Thanks a bunch. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. And let Legacy know if you have any questions, and I'm sure that we can get some kind of follow-up if you do.
Yeah. Guys, again, big thank you to Taters. A link to his channel will be in the description. You guys should really check him out. As you guys can see, he really does know what he's talking about when it comes to war. But that's going to do it for this video. Thanks again, Taters. Appreciate it, man.
All right. Thanks, brother, for having me on. Take it easy.
Peace out.